Welcome everybody to my intro after having the mic muted, which was awesome. Phil and Jay, and today we're going to keep going on what we started on Wednesday, and we're going to refine our piece. All right, so we went through a pretty ambitious project last week. We attacked 3 different ideas. We got kind of really stuck into the first of the 3, and then we kind of glossed over one, and then we just tapped as if it were just passing by the third. So I want to touch base on what we're going to focus on today. There's the one that I think we all kind of really bit into, and that was the one that was focusing on addiction and cell phones, and then the pop art kind of style. So I was really into that myself, and I had some pretty cool ideas, which I've been able to kind of play with. So I wanted to go back to the mood board. Listen, hey, how good are mood boards, right? I love them. I've just fallen in love with mood boards. They're the coolest thing in the world. And yeah, I just wanted to say that they're wicked. All right, so big focal point last week when we started, which kind of gets lost a little bit after we see the end results of the design, but a large amount of it was textures. So we wanted this kind of pristine, clean, plasticky sort of feel to things. The color palette, we were really happy with this muted. We talked about, and I kind of apprehensively sort of mentioned that I thought maybe I should have went like that punk rocky sort of hard pink, and instead went this route. I don't regret my decision. Again, hindsight being what it is, I think this muted kind of pasteliness will work really well for what we're doing. We talked about having elements, slight surrealistic elements, not so much that it takes over the piece, and that we really liked this idea of kind of hitting this pop art right off the line, like big, hard, dark lines, big contrasts, and of course, the big colors. Clean drugs, we talked about that. The idea of, we don't want to have people have a preconceived notion of where we're going with this piece. If we lean too heavily into that, and I say this not to be derogatory, but just for lack of better terms, this like street drugs feel, I think people will look at this differently. And we really, really want to have that parallel be condonable drug use rather than, non-condoned drug use. Sorry about that. I'll probably figure out cooler ways to say stuff as we go. Yeah. So that was the main thing, and of course the ever looming cell phone, right? Because that's the subject that we're kind of pushing into. So this was really a big one for us, and this is where we're going to kind of go. But I wanted to just touch on the other piece that we're going to kind of chip away at as we go, and that's the. Not this piece, but it's pretty cool. And that was the brutalism as the sort of demigod concept. And we wanted to do that paneled piece, which I'm super, super excited about. So this isn't getting lost in the shuffle. I just think what we're going to do is we're going to end up kind of hitting one of the pieces. So moving forward, what we're going to do is we're going to go Wednesdays. We're going to present a couple of pieces, much like we did in this Wednesday, with mood boards or some sort of materials that we can kind of sort through. And then whichever piece starts to manifest the most amount of sense, we're going to go with that one. And then we'll take the second one and we'll work on it as a secondary piece, and then it'll get pushed to the front, and so on and so on. Something to bear in mind moving forward. We're going to continue with this program next week. But then the week after that, and then for the rest of April, we're going to be focusing on PopCon YXE. I'll be attending that with another artist, Carrie Cooper. He's from Texas, and we're going to be integrating some stuff, some live streams with Carrie, as well as we get closer to the show, a lot more of the sort of prep work, and definitely going to be documenting the entire show. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So stick with that. And then we'll come back to the gallery show after May 3rd, which is 1st through 3rd will be PopCon, and then after that we'll be back into our normal building our gallery show. Okay. With all that said, brutalism, gonna get back to that, but tonight we're gonna focus on addiction. So we'll go right back to this fun time and just kind of talk about this again. And then I want to go into where I've refined some of my thought process. I made another mood board because mood boards. I really liked this. I talk about this and I still find it to be a really shocking image, but I'm thinking we really kind of have to put it away. In fact, I'm kind of thinking we're going to have to put this away as well. I've been thinking about this. I think the sensibility is there. I think the colors, that awkwardly bright color for, spectral use, I'm using the wrong words again, but I think you get my point. I think we've got the right inspiration, but we just need to go a little bit different. I still think the palette's right, and I still think the narrative focus is correct. I just think we have to focus on a little bit of a difference. So let's look at what I mean by that. So I made another mood board. I'm going to make it the big screen now so that we can kind of all look at this and see it a little bit better. Okay, so I stuck with this same theme, but I kind of started thinking about it and going like, there is a bit of a trope, I guess, or an expectation of what clean drugs are. Cocaine obviously is one of them, but then I really thought about pills, and what I like about the pill motif is that it gives us a lot of cool colors, like a ton of different colors. We can really play with this. So I thought if we're gonna work any of this into like a right in your face kind of approach, I think we'll use the pill. We already have the snorting of the screen. That's not going anywhere. It's kind of the main focus, but I figured this gave us another just sort of deeper anchor to bite into for colors, really. I also really liked the colors. I found the blacks in there kind of interesting with the blues and such. It's just a cool little color spectrum that I think we can kind of sort of go to for inspiration. The next couple are just like thinking about detail and how close we're going to be. And this was kind of a really good example of this. I mean, if you get really tight in there, yeah, we're going to have a little bit more of an exaggeration. So think more of that rectangular form, but it's still that kind of sizing. So we really, really have to be very aware of the physicality of the shot, if that makes sense. So I wanted that to be there. And then the rest are kind of like, these were the ideas that I had when I was looking at the screen of the phone as a device in the shot, right? So first I went, okay, so if it's going to be the face in the shot, I was like, could we do this kind of flashy, crazy, neon painted black light face? I thought it was, I'm also having like a bit of a love affair with this effect. I don't know if you've noticed this lately, but like I've been really, really falling in love with this effect. I don't know why, but I've been all over this. So you'll notice it everywhere right now. That's kind of me as an artist too. When I find something I really find I like, I start to just use it a lot. So this has been something I've really enjoyed. I like the like sort of ghostness layering that you can do with it. And I mean, it works, right? Also really enjoyed this piece right here with the with the self-portraiture. Anyway, so I'm not surprised if I'm kind of looking at this type of effect as being attractive to my brain right now. That said, I also think it might work really well for what we're doing. I'm kind of thinking now, like the more I get into it, the more I feel like this is the kind of surrounding that we find ourselves in while this individual is snorting this screen off. So I kind of conceptualize this shot as like, one, it's a really tight shot of the subject that we've already mapped out. And then I started thinking, like, what if we made this shot really big or kind of widened it out and made our primary subject now part of an environment? So something to consider. I'm always overcomplicating things, so I figured let's just continue doing that track and let's not mess about. So this was like kind of an inspirational thing. I also really liked the darkness that was being filled by these very simple. If you think about it, it is very simple if you were to conceptualize it in a drawing fashion, right? Yeah, there's subtle details here, but we're not talking about hyper realistic, crazy. This is very like smash, smash, smash. You're getting punched here. You're getting punched here. You're getting punched with the framing of the hair, right? And then everything else just sort of allows your brain to fill in the blanks while it still has the nice subtlety of the outline of what you're looking for. I like it. It's what you know what I really like about it though, and I got to be honest, I really love this. Certain things in certain things in images. I imagine people think about this. I do. Certain things kind of like just please your eye. This really pleased my eye. I felt it framed everything so neatly. It didn't make any sense, right? It just the glow's not coming off the lips, but it accents it so perfectly that it just made perfect sense to me. So I really enjoyed that. So I wanted that. This was the part about the shot that resonated deepest with me, and I wanted to kind of use in my brain to go, okay, this is what I want to affect when I'm doing this piece with this cell phone. So keep that in mind while we continue our look here. Same sort of thing here too, right? This idea of this glowing object and not having to, I get worried that you have to, as an artist, push a light beam so you can see it, rather than utilizing like a light source and then lighting it with that sort of negative space, sort of separating that light source and that individual, so to speak. So this was one of those things where I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of how you could do it. And bear this in mind. You probably see this every day, or you can kind of recreate this in your own life. But for me, this is a really nice exercise in, okay, I see the image and I see what it does. And I'm like, okay, I filled in the blanks in my own brain to make this make sense without having some sort of light source reference, if that makes sense. Like beams. I'm always worried about the beam thing. And I didn't want it for this piece. We'll get into that in a little bit. So this is why that's there. And the last piece, the same thing, like this idea of lighting. And I think we're going to lean into like the pinks and the purples and that sort of warmth. And I really liked this shot because I felt it really perfectly sort of spoke to the warmth. But what I really, really liked about this was something we talked about, was this idea of utilizing the eye in our shot to not only as a device in the shot to sort of pull things in or pull or drop things off, but also to reflect the screen itself. And I think that's really important to keep in mind, that we want to have that effect. So this was another thing that we could kind of reference as inspiration. And it's in this case, it's very subtle, right? Like we're looking at it from this far. This is kind of the normal positioning that you would have for a shot like this. Whereas we're back to discussing our shot and what we're working on. So we're like here. So what I really enjoy about what you get from tech nowadays that you probably wouldn't have access to before is you can get this really high resolution look so that you have a really strong reference point. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? I want that to make sense. It's going to make sense because I said so. How's that? So this is where this second mood board comes from, is this idea of like, okay, so we went through this exercise together on Wednesday, and I came in with this preconceived notion. Like in my mind, I had the shot and I knew I was going to do it the way I wanted to. And as we worked through the night, I started to really refine my vision of things. But here's the other catch. I went and I watched the live stream because I made some content and I made a video, and I've got more coming. Stay tuned. But as I went through that, I'm watching it and going, oh, I could do this, and I could do this, and I could do this. So, and I also started working on some sketching and started to refine the process. And I struggled with some stuff. I won't lie. So we're going to talk about some of my struggles as I went through this. But I wanted everybody to also see where, again, you don't be afraid to have this, like, you've got this idea and you're set. That's cool. Rock that out. But as you go through it, it will evolve and it should change. So don't be shocked when it does. And I mean, if again, you're in the digital world, and if you're a gamer, you'll appreciate this reference. Save and save often, but make a separate file. So on Procreate, for instance, you're limited in your layers. So it would be smart to duplicate the project when you're feeling like you're going on like a totally different tangent that will require a lot of space. In other words, it's not like I'm changing a color. We're talking like, no, I'm going to like design differently. Sorry. Make a duplicate copy of it and then just start there and just sort of play from that angle. You'll thank yourself and you'll thank me, which is great because I enjoy that. That was nothing. All that to say, the whole idea is to refine the process, and this is a really great way to do it. So, again, mood boards are rad, and I'm very, very cool with having them around. So, let's look at the work, and let's talk about some of the things that I struggled with doing a design that, I mean, you could argue that it's pretty ambitious. I mean, it is kind of ambitious. It also looks like a mess right now, and I imagine that's got to be difficult to see because that does look incredibly messy. But I did also want to show you all the iterations of how this kind of manifested and where we left it when we left Stream last, and then kind of how it went as I sketched through with Carrie, and we were going through this process together. So where I left it off on Stream was kind of in this condition, which is not a bad place. It was kind of here, okay? And we were getting to the point where we were talking about the angles of the face and how that was going to be influenced by the cell phone itself. As we remember, I had brought props, and we used a couple of different props. We first used this to stage, which we realized very quickly would have to be made redundant once we had to conceptualize the actual size of the thing, which I then went with my flip phone. And we were just talking about, okay, if we're going to snort off of here, how realistic do we have to be? And the acceptance that you were going to have to kind of manipulate the way in which things work to make this whole screen things work. I had some ideas about that, so I'll tell you about that in a second. Okay, so where we left off on Stream was kind of in this idea of understanding that the biggest challenge we were going to have was this relationship of 3 dimensions and how they were going to be influenced not only by the angle of where we were sort of looking and shooting from, at the same time as just the difficulty of making that work in your brain. So I went on and I was working with Carrie, and we were just sort of talking through it, and we went through it, and I went through it, and I went through it. And one of the things I kind of came to the conclusion was I had to start to map this out a little bit differently for my brain to get it, because I was really struggling. I got to be honest. And where my biggest struggles lied were in just seeing the layers of the face. When I was talking to Carrie during our session, I kept saying like cardboard waffling, but I then kind of realized I was kind of talking more about accordions. So let me show you what I mean by that. All right, so what I had to kind of come to terms with right away was the fact that the surface was flat, yeah, but I wanted the nostril to be in a position that was unnatural. So right away, I'm trying to make something happen that's just not going to happen. So again, you got to bear this in mind. We're forcing the issue. It's something that shouldn't happen. And the biggest difficulty I was having was, again, understanding that what now I'm doing is I'm going to take this part of the nose, just this part. So from the nostrils, underneath, and then just beneath the bridge, so where the ball of the nose happens. And that's where I'm going to start to manipulate space, right? And where I was struggling was, as a result of that manipulation, there's an unnatural sort of space that's being occupied. So now you're losing the way, like I can no longer see past this part of my nose to see this bridge. It's kind of weird, right? Because they're now obstructing because it's unnatural. So what I did was I went, okay, haha, sneaky. I'm just going to remove parts and use the layering that I have on the technology machine to be able to remove those things so that I can see behind them and then work in front and back. Listen, if everybody else knew this beforehand, I commend you. Honestly, I really do. It was really difficult. Like, it was super difficult for me to see it in my brain. And with that difficulty came just a lot of struggle. But once I got to get there, I was like, oh, okay, well, now I see it. And we talked about this. So much of it is like just, I now see it. And when you see it, you're like, oh, okay, well. Sometimes now you can't unsee it, and that can be a problem. One day we'll talk about that. The big part about this for me was sort of accepting that, okay, now I'm super manipulating this guy's head, so none of what makes sense makes sense. Okay, cool. I can work with that. So let's take away some of this messy. And to be honest with you, it's funny because there's certain parts where I'm like, I don't know if I need this part. We'll figure it out pretty quick, real fast with each other's help. Okay, so yeah, this is kind of where we were going. The black outline's a little bit of a try. Okay, this might be hard for you to see, but it's not hard for me, which makes a massive difference. So, okay, I'm gonna pop a layer here, and I'm gonna use it as just instructional space. So let's switch out colors, and we'll kind of talk about what we've done here and how it works, kind of, right? Okay, so the first thing I did was I went and I said, okay, I'm going to make some color choices just so that I can differentiate between the space. So I went, okay, dark blue is going to be the layer that I'm going to end up folding underneath. So like if we look at your face in relation to the phone, see the part right here, right? That one that rolls backwards. Okay, that's the dark blue part, right? It's going to be the darkest shade. It's going to be the most obstructed part. It's also the part that I might manipulate using tools the most to kind of suck in and move. Please bear this in mind. For this to work for me in my mind, we're layering everything. So every color that I'm talking about, we're going to like structure a layer and then eventually fuse them together, most likely out of necessity because we'll run out of layers, but we'll see how that works. All right, so we've got the dark blue that's going to be our deepest layer. And then I kind of just went with this weird peachy pinkish okay, I really just identified this part. And again, like I'm going to do a lot of this tonight, so I hope that doesn't bug you too much. But you see this her when you come up here, we'll make my head the big screen. And for that, I apologize, guys. But oh no, that's not the. There we go. Okay, so you know the part of your face right here that comes up and then kind of curves over and then comes down and then comes across the bridge of your nose, right? It's of course before the ball, where the problematic ball for this particular piece, right? So that's the part that I've chosen this color for. That specific part. I'm sure we can probably go with like a lighter shade of blue to kind of finish off the next layer. And what I think we're going to have to consider here is the way we're going to see this from now on is if we had a circle, we're going to have to kind of do this, right? That's legitimately now where we are, is that each of these sections that, oh, genius, I'm doing this without showing you. Hello. Okay, so as I was saying, so let me go backwards and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so when we're looking at this entire setup, we have to now, I think, look in this way, right? Let's take that as our subject, and then each space has now kind of broken up into these pieces, right? Now, in the case of the nose, for instance, it's a piece that's going to span like both of these pieces and this layer. You see what I'm saying? So in and of itself, it's going to have a unique sort of property, and that needs its own sort of look. Whereas the surrounding piece, if we were to if we were to encapsulate all of this as a full circle, right? So we're even looking at it from a sort of top-down version. All of these layers are all going to connect. But as it stands right now, we're just kind of looking at it from that like opening and outwards, right? Because that's where our subject's going to be. If we really wanted to, we could kind of go deeper and go, okay, this is now our face, and this is where we go. And then we're going to go, that's how this all kind of works for us to kind of see it. And obviously, you know, certain areas are going to require tighter work. Why? Because there's more kind of collapsing and more stress being put onto those pieces, whereas with the other pieces we might get like a heavier separation between these because there's more of that, less of that stress, and more of the shot is rolling over and being able to see more of the field behind it. So again, things to consider while you're working through your piece. And if you don't have a sketchbook while you're working, so like you might have a piece that you're working on, if you don't have a sketchbook that you've got with you, right, where you're shifting that focus and going like, oh, I'm not sure if I gotta do this way, and you're, get one. Like, do that, please. It saves you so much time and trouble, and you can work through problems. Remember, we're all visual learners, yeah? In this case, like, I can have this example and I can just leave it on this sheet and pull it every so often if I need to. I'm going to keep this actually because I like it, and I'm going to just do one adjustment and take out all of this goofiness here because I'm, you know, that's just for you guys to know what we were talking about, right? All right, so since now we've kind of understood this, and I mean, here's a good example. We can just do this and save ourselves even more trouble. Okay. And we'll just rotate it. And that's pretty much what we're thinking we're dealing with. You know what I mean? So we'll leave that there as our example. We can kill it and put it on, right? So we're happy there. All right, let's talk about the nose and where I think all of the trouble starts and ends for this piece is that nose, all right? So I struggled with trying to place this thing the whole time, and it was mean, and I was upset about it. But then once I got kind of what I was trying to do, I was like, okay, we're good. I'm happy. Okay, so see what I mean? So where I was struggling was trying to get the nose to line up with everything else, right? If it doesn't make sense with like the mouth position and the eye position and the rest of the head, it's just this weird thing that kind of floats there. So I was really struggling with this. And from a perspective position, it was really messing with my brain. So I accepted that the framing of the shot was likely going to be something like this, right? Like that was going to be it. And that I might be able to kind of go, I mean, if it kind of makes sense, is just push the framing kind of like this. Right? Like that. So that we're really getting just that kind of shot. I also want to be able to produce this entire thing into a much bigger piece. But right now, I want this to be a very tight piece. I'm going to put us off into like a break for 2 seconds because I'm about to sneeze again. and I need 2 seconds so I don't sneeze in your face. So bear with me. I will be right back. All right, sorry about that. Wow, just sneeze. I was like sneezing 3 or 4 times and just nothing. I also see I have chats. Sorry about that. What am I missing here? 4 shadows it goes. Oh, that's actually not a bad idea either. That's actually a really great observation from Invalid Username, which I think is a great name, by the way. You could use different kind of lens effects. You could use a fisheye lens. And that fisheye lens idea is really smart because it does affect some eye trickery, which is what we're expecting to do anyway. And it helps us out just kind of conceptualize what that might look like. So very, very, very good idea from Invalid Username, which I appreciate. Let's kind of go into this and let's look a little deeper. So when I got this nostril positioning where I wanted it, it kind of, again, helped put everything in perspective. And then, yeah, then you could add this in. And this started to help me. Remember what I was saying about our example, right? And how I had this feeling that we were going to have to sort of cheat it in a way that might not be good for us. But then I was like, hold on. So what I was thinking was, what if our friend here, we're going to call him Snorty McSnortpants. Let's say Snorty McSnortpants is like sort of using the phone like this now. So we're not like riding the whole thing across like that. We're more like this and kind of getting our nostril in a really, really weird spot, and we're just sucking. So if we're sucking from like here, and we're pulling the face or like the digital face off of the cell phone, which is kind of what I thought we could do, then we could kind of allow this to be whatever position we need to. Do you see what I mean? Because we're not doing drugs off of it. It's no longer a surface, right? It's not something I have to like balance because there's going to be some sort of abstract pile on it, right? I don't have to do this anymore. I can hold the cell phone like this and do it like this. I just need to make this make sense somewhat. So why don't we kind of conceptualize our incredibly awkward nostril push to be here? And let's get him tilting like we've got him tilting so that we can lose this whole side here. And that's where we'll start to really twist features. Because there's also that too, right? Like we want to twist the head around. It's no fun if this looks real. We're snorting a cell phone's apps into our character's face. I don't want it to be real. I want it to be different and strange. So that was where I think a large amount of the challenge lied, and then troubleshooting that and getting there was such a nice sort of feeling. One of the tools I used to help this along was definitely the the manipulation tool, the warp tool, and then I could uniformly pull the layer around. So from this position, I was able to kind of really comfortably shift things around. Again, back to mistakes are limited because you can kind of go backwards. Another thing that I really found was starting to get a bit challenging for my brain was the idea of, again, back to that like waffling effect, or that accordion effect, which was kind of how I approached troubleshooting it. So as you can see here, right, the way I looked at this piece was I was like, okay, this is going to kind of go like this, which is like this, which is like this, right? And that gives me, depth. It also gives me substance to understand that, like, okay, that's that part. And then we can kind of mirror that here. And that's the bridge as it folds in an awkward way to get to here where the ball of the nose is, right? Then meanwhile, back here, we've got the side of the nose, which is coming across the face here, right? And then we slowly start going, okay, well, now I really want to exaggerate the eye, because that was a big part of my thought process. We're not going to get the overhang that I kind of thought about, because I don't, like, we can't have it both ways. I'm sorry, I tried. My brain just couldn't smoosh it, because then it was all like, then you're like trying to smush the nose so deep into the eye socket that the eye is kind of curving unnaturally. No, we can still get the glow effect that I think we need, and we can do trippy stuff with eyes because it's our world, so whatever, it's our choice. So I kind of started to position, I don't know if you noticed this. And back to layer necessity, yes, I just popped another layer because I know this part of the head I'm likely going to want to shift around or size again. So we're going to go at it this way. I don't know about you guys. Tell me something. You do a sketch initially and you get a form on a page or on a screen. Do you struggle with like reforming that? Do you know what I mean? Like there's a ghost line that you almost have to, you're forced to carry that. It's fair. Thank you, valid user. It's all good. It's all good. Yeah, do you have a problem like moving away from that original form? I am right now, but I'm kind of happy with it, so I'm going to keep going with it. One of the other things I found really cool about Procreate was the pressure sensitivity of the stylus was really good. So I was really able. It takes some getting used to. It really does. I won't lie. But once you get it, it feels good. Like in that case. And then I think the hardest part for me when I was adapting the pens was sort of knowing the thickness you want to go for. With this particular pen style, I use a pretty thick, like I keep it at a thick distance and I just play with pressure sensitivity because I like the inconsistency of the depth or the width of it as you go in ink. And in this case, we're back to like, I'm kind of thinking we're going to stick with this black outline as the main vehicle for this because we do want to stick in that pop art lean. But as you can see, we're starting to get a nice kind of acquaintance with our face here. Something I observed in our last stream, and I will reiterate it now through actual example. Zoom out, guys. Zoom out, zoom out, zoom out. But I'm kind of digging that. Right? I'm kind of digging that. That's starting to make sense, no? Because, like, it's going to have to, like, I was thinking it's kind of have to slope, right? So I'm kind of building out to that sloping. My worry is like, and I'm sure you've already figured this out, I'm not super anatomy driven. I'm not hyper realistic, guys. I want it to look right, but I don't. At least not in this case. I don't need it to be like, this is exactly where this bone is connected. See, I'm already stammering with the idea of what bone's connected to what They didn't cover it in the song. All right, here we go. Okay, so, and we know we're meeting up here, right? With this inking in a different layer of inking. So I'm not like too worried about the connectivity, but we're just going to be reticent to the fact that we're going to end up having to fuse this. And to be honest with you, with a piece this, I'm going to say this complicated, we're going to ink this again. Like all this layering is just to make it all make sense. We're going to ink it again. All right, so this is where I'm going to start to question whether or not I should throw another layer in, because I'm thinking this is where I'm going to get into some trouble. Okay, so all right, this is when you start to take away layers, right? Now, there's some stuff I want to point out that I could probably get rid of, but for some strange reason I'm keeping there, and maybe we can figure out if I actually need it there. This is the initial guideline, right? So we don't exactly need that because it's not exactly lining up. So let's trash that bad boy. And now we're left with more of that raw framework that we've starting to connect. Now, all right. Do I want to continue with this like this? And it's not jumping off a precipice, guys. We're not jumping off of bungee cords. This is just it's just sketchy. We can stop and go wherever we want to. Coffee. I'm just thinking, no, I'm happy with this. I think we should be happy with this. This is a nice direction to go in because we're starting to see it. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a disconnect right in the bridge point where we're trying to connect this part of the nose to the now kind of manipulated cheekbone area. And I think that's going to keep that way. Part of me wants to kind of box this out a bit and give it a little bit more. I don't know. It feels weird. We can't avoid it either, so we might as well try to tackle it now just to see if we can make it make sense. See, I don't like that. I think that's just too much of an extreme, and now I want to kind of undercut under here just to give it some more. Maybe that's the answer, though. Okay, let's look at it from that perspective. Do you see what I mean? Maybe we can. Oh, okay, hold on. Maybe we can kind of play this game, yeah? Yeah, you see what I'm saying? We can do a little bit of that, sneaky. I mean, we could maybe sneaky this with some shading. That might be right there. That might be it right there. Right? See, at some point in time, we're going to get enough people who chat in here that I can be like, yes, you get it. I see it. We're in it. No, I really like that because what we'll do is we'll continue this kind of style like this, and we'll push that in like that. And maybe we're going to accept a little bit of like fusion of pop styles. So here's the thought process. We can manipulate our mood board in a second, but do we want to go and lean into a J style? I mean, it is something we're doing together. It is me doing it, but bear with me, guys. For some strange reason, I always lose. That's why, because I started something. Okay. So, do we want to go like this? Do we want to go like this? Yeah, do we want to go like this? With this kind of cross-hatching sort of feel? Do you know what I mean? Oh, invalid username. We're here. What you got for me, friend? I think the swooping line at the outer edge of the eyes cutting into a cheek would be great. I don't disagree with that. Let's go back to that in a sec. So this is kind of one way that I like to shade and approach shading, is just kind of using a lot of that kind of large cross-hatching, not cross-hatching sort of approach. What else are we also using? relief. That's kind of what I was trying to think of, was that kind of topographical relief map sort of look, which I kind of get in these points where I do this type of shading sort of approach. So I'm sort of thinking this section would kind of be more indicative of what I was in my mind leaning towards. But I'm open to any sort of suggestions that anybody else has got. It like, yeah, okay, I see what you mean. See, but here's my thought. Invalid username. Here's what I'm thinking though, right? If we're using this sort of sectional pieces, right? I'm thinking that it kind of goes like this, and then a little like that. So this ends up being the middle of that point. So then it slopes here, and then slopes here, and then it slopes in. Here and in, here and in, here and in, and then it would go in, like this. And then this is where you kind of get that break. And then as we kind of get closer to here, we're now at the point where underneath the nose, that I know there's a name, just put it in the thingy with the buttons and tell me what it is, because I don't know. But this piece, right? This was where I started to kind of realize where I was going to need to kind of pull from. So I'm like, I got to pull from here. And then I'm thinking like, this is mouth. Right in this area right here. Do you know what I'm saying? If we're doing this with like realism in mind, which we're not, because I think that becomes really difficult. So now I'm going like, okay, nah, this is where this kind of goes, and it's pulling behind the nose, right? And this is where this whole like, I got to move stuff around. Okay, thank you. Ironically enough, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, but I have a mic cover. So you pull it. Nope. All right. So you pull from underneath and behind the nose, and then this is where we have to start going. Okay, where am I gonna, like, how am I manipulating this dude's face to get a mouth even in there? And then I was like, wait a second. I have an ace in my hole. The cell phone. Right? The cell phone, guys. We forgot about the cell phone. It covers the face. Right? Again, right? We can kind of cheat it like this. And remember that we're doing this. Again, we're manipulating the world, not vice versa. So, what I thought was, what we can do, I got to get this behind the nose. And we'll do this right here. So now we kind of think, okay, is this where our cell phone is in relation to the nose, right? And is this kind of the drop-off point? And can we angle it even if we needed to? Which I kind of like the angle idea. And then kind of like doing this sort of weirdness and manipulating the form. Cell phone, we're probably not even going to touch today, but I just thought it would be something to think about when we're dealing with the face. Like we talked about initially, though, I still think what we should be driving for is a design that is fully realized, even behind parts that we can't see. I think it's the best answer, right? The only thing we're not going to be able to really sort of mess about with is the part. No, we're going to have to try. We're going to have to try to like curb all this face behind that cell phone. I'm happy with it, guys. I'm happy with the challenge. I think it's the right answer. Because I think that's just going to give us a bigger payoff. And I think then that gives us, because I started going, oh, hold on, why are we just conceptualizing this one shot? Let's conceptualize 3 shots. So what we do is we start off in our minds and we go this tight, super tight shot with the cell phone. But then what if we bumped backwards a shot? So if we took one, I don't know, okay, let's pretend this is what? How far away would you say that this shot would be right here? 6, 7, let's go 10 inches? 10 inches. So let's go from 10 inches to 10 feet. And then from 10 feet, we go another set of like another distance out, and we're pulling each time. So we can reveal more of the environment. We can play with more of what's surrounding. This can be an overall sort of shot that gives us one sort of lead in when we're thinking. But once we bump out, we're seeing so many other different things. I think that's something to consider. And that's why I want us to kind of really bite into the idea that we're going to really have to finish the shot. Yeah. Okay, so we know we've got this. Yeah. I know. We know we've got this challenge here. We're going to keep it the red layer because it's helping us to work through some of this. So we've already decided that like this is going to be a point where we're going to peak, right? We're going to kind of keep pulling this like this, right? Now I don't think we can pretend that this is going to be like a rolling point. That's the edge where we're going to say it's going to cut, but I think we can probably suggest that this is definitely a section that we can address as its own thing. Do you know what I mean? I kind of think that might actually work, because what we're going to need to do is somehow, this is the bigger challenge now, is, okay, so this part here, it's the nostril part, right? You know, that cheek that kind of, right? So we want to take this cheek here and we want to somehow curve it over and then roll it under. Do you know what I mean? We're going to roll it under so that we can start to create a little bit of like, I don't think, let's see, because it would be pressed against the phone behind there. That's kind of what I was thinking too, invalid, but I didn't mean to call you. That's bad. I didn't mean it like I think it will get lost behind the cell phone. But at the same time as well, I still want to kind of see what we're missing, right? So that we can, again, fill in the blanks in our heads. It's so much an exercise for me to kind of get comfortable with conceptualizing a piece. Something that I think I took for granted as a younger artist. Because I never really put stock in making a process. I just picked up a pad and went like, okay. Like I was the kind of guy who was like, the piece of paper will tell me what it needs to be. And then I will manifest the work. Like that kind of shit. I'm so sorry if anybody had to hear me say that kind of thing. It was just silly. But no, now like I invest in time in that process because so much of it is about challenging myself to what I need to learn and grow with. Do you know what I'm saying? So I applaud anybody who's willing to sort of like create a method and start to manipulate their craft into some sort of methodology, because it does really help bear fruit, if that makes sense. So right now for me, it's this idea of like, okay, I kind of want to get to the point where this manipulation makes sense enough that visually you get it. It's not going to make sense. It's not going to make sense because it's not supposed to, right? At least that's kind of where my brain goes. All right, so we got to pull this cheekbone here, or this cheek. So I'm kind of looking at it like this. And then we've got a tighter ring here, and then this. And then it's going to slide underneath and fold, right? And that's where everything kind of goes awry, because it doesn't make sense. Right? So if we go like this, you see what I mean? If this splits here, okay, let's do it like this. Let's fold it out and then pull it backwards. Does that make sense? So like if we're here, then this should be mouth, right? Top of mouth, bottom of mouth, small mouth, but mouth nonetheless. So if I was to pull this back this way, do you see what I mean? Let's see if we can do that. Can we do that? Okay, we'll do this. Bear with it for 1 second. Okay, we'll do this. If anybody's wondering what I'm doing, I just duplicated the layer I had so I can erase this, because that part is not really relevant to what we're talking about with this mouth exercise. So let's do that. Let's use the warp tool. And all right, so we're going to pull this back, right? See what I mean? This is going back here. Okay, so you're all probably thinking to yourself, what is this dude doing? None of this makes any sense. It might not to you, right? But to me, I'm like, hold on, right? My mind starts to function a little bit better when I can kind of literally compartmentalize pieces and go, okay, if I could take that piece and shift it and sort of work it. And I never knew that I kind of worked well in that vein until I was able to kind of play in this field. So this helps my brain, right? The catch, of course, is that there's more to this, right? So we kind of have to now go and move this here, right? Because it didn't stretch out this way. It stretched out this way, right? So we got to kind of do it this way. And then we have to assume that it shrinks because of perspective, right? So now we're kind of pushing backwards this way, even deeper underneath the features. And then I would kind of argue that, and I think I can do this. I don't know if I can. Right? It would be more like this. Do you see what I mean? Right? Because that's what we're doing. We're literally rolling it. Now, I'm also very much aware that we're not discussing the massive elephant in the room called your skull. Don't slow me down, man. It would totally be underneath the phone. Like I believe it would be absolutely underneath the phone. In fact, you would argue that it was probably pushed against the phone. You see what I mean? Like, this is gone. I'm now just kind of playing the role of half of the face I have seen in this shot, right, is kind of on here. So now I've taken this bottom part of my nose. I'm so sorry to be like throwing my nose in everybody's face. But so if you look at it, right, the ball of my nose, I've taken this, right, and I've kind of almost pushed it off to the side as if it's rolled so that the optical nostril that is closest to the shot is somehow rolling open so that it can receive more, but it's balancing on something flat so that it can attain this kind of cowabunga-like power slide into the shot, which is what I think it's kind of become if you look at it, right? So from my stretch of the imagination, for some strange reason, my brain has been pushing me to like try to mush this head into the most awkward spots instead of just accepting the fact that I can just put the cell phone in the way. Okay, so why do we do this, everybody? We do this because we're artists, and artists constantly enjoy overcomplicating things. At least I, as an artist, enjoy overcomplicating things. Others do not, I guess. Okay, so let's put our guide back. We can take away our mouth reference because, as Invalid Username has aptly pointed out, we can really just give up on this foolish quest and accept the fact that we're going to just cut off the face at that point. Okay. Now let's also accept a couple other things. We still can play in this angle because I think it's the right angle, and I think it's awkward enough that it will push your brain into a weird spot, which is what we want. At the same time as well, it'll free up some real estate behind the framing so that we can maybe do some more interesting stuff with the face. But we still really want that neon look. I won't walk that back. I want that kind of neon look across the entire piece. So if we are going to play this like smaller piece to bigger piece to biggest piece, that's got to be the motif. And we're going to start to discuss what that looks like, most likely in a couple of streams as we go. For now, we're just going to kind of frame out the last pieces of this whole cell phone issue problem. I was thinking the same thing, but I was also thinking the idea of like either euphoria, right, or desperation. It's an expression that I'm really curious to try to see if we can like hit. First, we just have to construct it. Once we've got the construction done, then we can start to kind of key on the emotional value of what we're trying to express. At this point, for me, we've really accepted the addiction angle of things. So now it's a matter of going, okay, like let's lean into it really hard, and how are we going to do that? So now that we can remove some of the clutter, specifically me trying to, force a square peg into a circle hole, let's do this the correct way now and accept it. So I still like the nostril position. I think it's crazy enough that I think it works. Now it's a matter of going, how do we kind of frame around that with our cell phone? So I think what we're gonna do. Let's save ourselves some BS, okay? We're gonna do this. Okay, and we're gonna leave it like that, and we're gonna mess around with this. So let's put this like kind of right here. We know we have to go here, right? We know we have to, because we've established that nostril's got to be there, and now we're kind of like looking at it like this, right? So that's forced there, right? So this part of the nostril is going to be over the framing. We're just placing the framing there for now. And then it's a question of like, I almost kind of like this bumpy curvature that's like that, because I mean, I want to do this two ways. So we're gonna do this now. So let's move our framing here. Okay, first we're gonna dump this because we don't need it. First I want to move the framing underneath the nostril. Okay, so let's do that. And then we're gonna duplicate this. And we're gonna pull it all the way up here. So now we have a duplicate of this. Follow me here, and I think this is gonna make sense. You're gonna like it. So what I was thinking is how we're going to manipulate the framing of the cell phone itself. So it kind of made sense. Was what if we had that being as part of what is being snorted? See what I'm saying? So like, yeah, like that kind of feel. And it's even coming off the frame. See what I mean? Like that. So like that's the thing that's getting sucked off. Don't be dirty. don't be dirty. You guys, don't be dirty. And if you are being dirty, well done. I mean, that's kind of funny. Let's not lie. So do you see what I mean? We can do that. I think what we want, I don't know. I like that. I kind of like that. I'm not gonna lie. It looks good. All right. So let's do a little experiment here. Let's make this look good and see if we can quantify that for sure. We're just gonna use my favorite color. It's become my favorite color. I'm not gonna lie. I've got this thing for turquoise. I don't know why. I won't lie. It's not something I grew up loving, but Gotta love for turquoise, guys. Just gonna see if this works. All I'm gonna do right now is just gonna add some color to this frame. And then what I'm gonna do is underneath it, I'm gonna add some more, probably some black, just to see the contrast, and then we'll probably frame it out. Hold on, I'm curious about the shape, but flipped vertical. I'll show you in one sec. Let me fill this with color. Why I want to do this is I want to see if this kind of effect's gonna work the way my brain was telling me it would. So all I'm doing, guys, is I'm just putting some color in the layer behind the framing I just made, right? Just so that we can have a bit of a contrast. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing. Oh, that's what I want. I'm going to do the same thing, only I'm going to just drop something behind the main border. What I'm going to do also before that is I'm going to duplicate this layer, and I'm going to move it uniformly just a little bit bigger, and then that way I can do this, and now we have a better kind of more three-dimensional frame for our phone. Okay, now we'll do this. Let's go with like a charcoal gray, because we'll still get that spatial relationship between the screen and the base, without doing black, because I think, at least for this purpose for now, we'll stick with, that should go right behind there. We'll just stick with trying to get good contrasting colors so we can see the differences. We'll move back into our color palette as we get into actual coloring and shading, but right now we're making choices, and that's the thing. We got to play around, or else we're not gonna get where we want to go. We're not gonna get where we want to go. I don't know why that happened, and I don't know why I'm talking like that, but that's how I'm gonna talk right now. All right, let's look at that. Okay, see what I mean? So, I mean, we could theoretically just leave this in this kind of negative space, black cartoonishness. I think that's a missed opportunity, to be honest. I would like to almost put an entire design in there so it's like a world. Oh, man, why do I talk? This piece is never going to get done, guys. We're going to be doing this piece forever. This piece is just going to keep happening. That's not incorrect. We're talking about the left. Yeah, I agree. I think this whole part of the design right here on the left-hand side, it's going to have to come in. Like, one thing that stands out to me right away, because I was kind of seeing it too, now that we've reframed it, is like this section all needs to tighten in. Right? And it's going to have to, when we're going back to our example over here, right? These tighter layers, we're going to have to really stick to them now and start to accept that this needs to be a lot like tighter, and then get into a bigger framing as we get more outward to the center, right? Which pretty much is like, yeah, kind of where that line is, right? Because remember, we're now going like that, and then in. So this kind of flarks. So I think we're too wide on this part here. I think it's just way too wide. And it's not respecting that kind of tightening in that's going to happen just naturally. And as a result, this cheekbone here can kind of swoop out more, because it's not now being smooshed by the cell phone. It's just there. So we can kind of even conceptualize it like that. But I do agree. I think that's too far out. Tapping my screen. Oh, you got to see where I tapped my screen. So I think that's too far out. Whereas right here is a good kind of concept of where the eye socket probably will land. Right there. And then we're back to this kind of extremeness here. And again, I'm not at all advocating that we're going to keep the cell phone size and dimension and positioning all just like that. I'm just saying I think this makes a lot of sense. We've tried to push the envelope a little bit more with the facial positioning, almost trying to like make it flat up into the nose area, and then having it like this and pretending like skulls don't create rigidity. Clearly that's not going to work. So we've now taken this attack point, which is great. And I mean, now we have things we can start to question. Okay. So from a directional standpoint, there are ways we can start to look at this piece and still get what we want, but we might want to switch it around. Are we happy? Like, these are the questions I think we have to start to ask ourselves as we go into the next phase of the development of this piece. Okay, one. You meant the turquoise triangle. That's fair. I don't know if I like the way the turquoise triangle goes into the nostril. I think we could probably, if we're going to go this route, we might as well, like, I would probably argue that if I'm going to do this, then we might as well start doing this from like all angles, pulling more of it so it becomes more of a spectacle rather than just pulling the screen, but having the main screen kind of buckling off. So less of an extreme version of this. Let me show you what I mean. I'm saying it, I can probably demonstrate it. So like, if we put it, I don't know if I can put it back where I found it. I can't put it back where I found it. But if we kind of look at it from the perspective of it's just getting pulled off, and then most of the action is coming off of the screen in different parts, right? So you could just pull it, and they could all kind of form into this almost smoke-like creature that would then go in. Lots of options. Remember, one of the things we really wanted to try was the idea of having the social media icons like being pulled off specifically going into the nostril, and having those things being manipulated and pulling, and changing the wording to like a bunch of other sort of words that would be more, I don't know. Yeah, you know what I mean. More artsy, or thought-provoking. So again, crystallizing trying to crystallize a piece like this isn't something that will happen immediately. And I would argue that not every piece is going to end up the way you saw it when you first thought about it. You're going to go through the process, and you're going to play with it and manipulate it and play with it, manipulate it, talk to people. People's ideas are going to come up. Like Invalid Usernames got some great ideas that I'm not seeing because I'm not that person, right? Do you see what I mean? So every time we kind of go at these things, we get to see it from a different angle. So don't be afraid to play around and move things and manipulate them, right? All right, so things to take away from tonight, because let's be honest, we've got a great thing going. We're really, really making some great progress. And I want to touch on a couple of things before we exit tonight, and kind of invites you guys to participate as well. So here's a few things that are coming. We touched on this before. What's really, really important when we're going through this process is accepting the fact that when we have gone through it all and we've crystallized the final product, that's when we're done. We also appreciate that, like most artists, I too have to kind of move around a lot. So we're going to try to attack multiple pieces at the same time. Today, we stuck with addiction because I think this piece has so much to give, not only to us as a group, because we can kind of play with it and look at different forms, but I just like it. It's challenging. And I can't stress this enough. if it's not challenging, sometimes it becomes really hard for me personally to engage. I can't say that for everybody. Everybody's their own artist, and I would never impose my will on others, or at least my methods. Yeah. Okay, so we've got a good start. We're looking good. Let's touch one more time on one thing I really wanted to say about mood boards, because man, I love me some mood boards, and I would recommend you guys check them out and do some for yourselves. This helped me really start to kind of go, okay, I know where I want to go now. Not only that, but working with you guys on Wednesday certainly really pushed it over the edge. So I would highly recommend you do this, and don't be afraid to go to it multiple times during your projects. Even if you're looking at sections of your project and saying, okay, I have to think about this because it's not working for me, everything else works. This is a wonderful way of pushing you to do things. And the reason why I say that is because I wanted to get a minimum amount of examples of what I wanted to express to you guys tonight. I think it's only fair. So part of it has been this relationship, building a community, and knowing that I need to express myself not only verbally but visually with examples. So for me, this was really important for this process. But it also became a pretty good part of my process, because as a result of this, me thinking in a considered fashion about what other people might need to understand, I started to understand better, and I started to be able to express my thoughts much, much better, not only while we were streaming, while I was thinking about the stream, but also when I was thinking about the piece, right? The other thing too is, again, it gives you avenues of creative thought. So you might have like a bunch of things fire off that aren't really for this piece, but are going to work so well for another piece. So it's a great way to, sort of accrue a bunch of cool images that help you kind of go, oh, all right, I'm inspired to work. You never know. You get a nice image catalog, and you're having a creative block, or you're looking at a piece and you just can't see it. You might want to look at your image catalog and go, oh, and see these things that at one point inspired you to do other things that now are going to potentially inspire you to do things that you're working on, or new things. So remember, I like these things for a reason, not only for right now, but because I like these colors. I like the composition of the shots, the way that they staged them, and the way the choices were made just happened to link really well with my sensibilities. So again, don't be afraid to accept that these are things that you enjoy and incorporate them into your craft, because it pays off dividends when you love the stuff, right? Housekeeping really quickly, things to look out for and things to consider. One, yes, we have our PopCon YXE trip coming up. Myself and Gary Cooper from Texas, a fellow artist of mine, who you will be seeing in some streams coming up. We're getting together and we're going to be sharing a booth, and we're collaborating on some pieces. We're going to be documenting the whole journey. It's going to be absolutely awesome and wild, and I highly recommend everybody to sort of stick around and kind of keep involved with that. We'll do some streams. I'm going to do some posts and some videos on my YouTube channel about the process, and then we'll be doing some behind the scenes stuff at the actual show, the lead up to the show, picking up Carrie from the airport and stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun, so I highly recommend everybody kind of stick with that and check it out. We did talk about our program, the gallery show build out. We're going to take a break from at the end of next week to cover PopCon. And then once PopCon's done after the first week of May, we're going to return back to the gallery show. So next week, we're going to work on brutalism and worship of cell phones, and the idea of the sort of worship of cell phones as gods. So we're going to play that game. We're going to attack this mood board. Don't judge me because I love mood boards. We're going to attack this mood board, and we're going to start to really work on the sketch that we had started in our first stream, which was that paneled sketch, which I'm super excited about because I think it's going to be really cool, which is that sort of approach of having the cell phone be this sort of worshipped obelisk, and how we're going to kind of make that look brutalist and have brutalist sensibilities while having a tongue-in-cheek, satirical sort of approach to how cell phones have eclipsed religion. You gotta love weighty topics, right? I mean, that's the fun part about it. A big announcement for me, waiting approval. I have started a Patreon. We do have some really awesome things. A large amount of it is going to be behind the scenes work, some free access to some content that we'll be establishing outside of stream, a lot of the process stuff, and of course, lots of access to art, lots of access to me. We'd love the support. I'm not going to lie. It's something that will really resonate with me and with all of the people that are involved with all of the projects that we're working on, which is super, super amazing. And I'm super excited to kind of move forward with that as a part of our lives together. Adoration for the Mystic Cell Phone. Yes. And remember, we talked about this. I made jokes about this. I put a short about this. Remember, the cell phone is going to go outside to a cliff. I want to work the cliff thing in. Go back and watch the other stream. It's worth it. It's funny. It's funny. At least it was funny to us. So big moves, big changes, and a lot of stuff that I'm really excited to kind of share with you folks. So stick around if you're interested. I highly recommend you guys comment and give me some suggestions. If you have questions, I am happy to answer them and involve you in the process. It just makes the entire art thing a lot more, just more enjoyable if there's more of us participating. So with that all in mind and all of that said, I can't thank you enough for all stopping through on a Saturday night. I have my coffee. We have our art. I'm hoping to get together with you folks again real soon. Wednesday, we're going to pick up the brutalism. And then next Saturday, we're going to continue to try to brutalize that piece and get it done. We'll also touch back on our addiction piece. And then we'll move forward with our nomophobia, which became a really, really hard thing to tackle. So maybe we can unpack that on Wednesday. Until then, I say, and I always say, enjoy your art. And I love you very much, guys. Thank you for stopping.